Hi, and welcome to Gateway Unlocked, Mastercard Payment Gateway's podcast, where we connect with teammates from across the globe and the organization on payment trends, innovation, and ideas that are shaping our business. I'm Ann Herrera, and today I'm joined by David Budzevski, Vice President, Product Management. Hey, David, welcome to the show today.
Hi, Anne. Thanks for having me. My name is David Budzevski, and I look after the value proposition function within the Gateway business globally. And what that fundamentally means is that we're accountable for driving the product strategy and the end-to-end value proposition across our entire Gateway product solution.
Well, David, I'm so glad you joined us today. And actually, you've just kind of recently joined Mastercard Payment Gateway Services, honestly. I know we've had COVID. We haven't really gotten to see each other in person, but, also just welcome to the team as well. We were talking a little bit about your role and what you do at Mastercard, and something caught my attention, and this is, I know why we're talking today, is we were talking about how your role shapes the Gateway, specifically when we look at design thinking. When we think about design thinking, of course, you think about it as a way to conceptualize and solve problems. And I really see that Mastercard Payment Gateway Services has fantastic problem solvers. But I never thought of design thinking as a way to build and optimize and add features to a payment gateway. So can you tell our readers and our audience a little bit more about, what is design thinking?
Sure, Anne. So at its core, design thinking is a human-centered proposition. It encourages organizations to focus on the people, customer they're creating for, which leads to better products, services, and internal processes. When you sit down to create a solution for a business need, the first question we should always ask is, what is the human behind the need? In employing design thinking, we're pulling together what's desirable from a human point of view with what is technologically feasible and economically viable. It allows those who are trained as designers to use creative tools to address a vast range of challenges. The process starts with taking action and understanding the right question. It's all about embracing simple mindset shifts and tackling problems from a new direction. And whilst I said that it is fundamentally for trained designers, it is also a concept now that is making its way to the broader product function with less focus on having to be a dedicated designer and having more of the general skills to be able to apply to the day-to-day operation of a product function.
So then that makes sense that, you're in product management and you work, I'm sure, with design thinking, and probably not just within this job, but previous jobs as well. What kind of led you into this? Because I feel like design thinking itself is perhaps new, and please correct me if I'm wrong. But even in the payments industry, when we talk about human-centered, we just think of, well, if you're a consumer, you think of, did the payment go through? And if you're a merchant, did I get paid? And should I give those goods or services? So how did design thinking intertwine into the payments? And, and specifically for you, is this something that you were passionate about before, and then did you get into payments, or was it vice versa?
So design thinking as a framework and concept has been around for decades. For me personally, I was introduced to design thinking almost 10 years ago when I was building solutions for government agencies. So clearly at that point, payments wasn't necessarily the core domain for me. But since then, my affinity for design thinking or human-centered design has evolved, and I've had the opportunity to not only apply the framework to dozens of projects, but also work with what some would say are the founders of the term design thinking, being IDEO. The concept of having a deep understanding of the products has captivated me, and seeing the results of applying this approach has spurred me to advocate and implement the concept throughout my career, not only personally, but within my teams. At Mastercard, a leading global technology organization, design thinking is well embedded through the learning and product frameworks, which is driving the differentiation of our solutions. It's how we now start to embrace that within the payments and gateway ecosystem to really ensure that we are solving the problems with that customer or that user at the center of everything that we do.
So you think is that your favorite aspect of design thinking, is perhaps the problem solving? Do you like the process? What is your favorite aspect of design thinking?
My favorite aspect is the engagement with customers. Having the opportunity to sit there with the customer, hear firsthand what their challenges are, and then working collaboratively to solve for that challenge. And ensuring that challenge is not only isolated for that customer in the way we solve for it, but it is scalable and transferable to all our other customers within the Gateway business and obviously in other product functions. And that's why creating personas is a fundamental part of the process within Gateway. We start with the customer persona that defines the different audience that we are looking to engage with or solve for. And we use that as a foundational basis for then the design thinking process.
Yeah, that was actually a good, you're referencing a podcast that we had with Matt Evans, I would say probably in early, maybe May of 2021. And that was also eye-opening for me because I loved how our customer persona is not the only persona that we have on the Gateway, but we also are considering the consumers, the small business owners, and then of course our partners as well. So one of my first questions was, let's talk about the process. Our main partners are our white label acquirers. And yes, we definitely go from our white label acquirers to their merchants to then their customers. But if a white label acquirer or one of our partners is having a challenge, how do they get engaged with your team? What is the process?
Sure. So in terms of the process of engaging, we fundamentally look to engage through our regional product functions who then work with our customers to really create that connectivity. We either do it on a reactive basis if a customer has a problem statement that they'd like to work with us to solve for, or conversely, we have a more proactive approach. And that's really about framing the strategy for us and looking to shape what the future of the product, the Gateway product, looks like. And through that process, we effectively run a number of ideation or collaboration workshops with either internal stakeholders as well as external stakeholders. And we look to start breaking down the problem statements. So we ask a number of questions through the course of a number of workshops and get to the root of the problem that we are collectively trying to solve. And from that point, we then start to build upon what a potential solution could look like. And that solution development is not only about sitting within an office space, ideating, building a view of what a solution is. It's actually an open feedback loop where we talk to either one customer or a number of customers and look to test the concept, validate our thinking as we go through that journey and iterate. And that's an important part of design thinking, is the iteration process. We'll never start with the right answer to begin with. We'll need to go through an evolutionary process, test, get feedback until we get to a point where we feel we have actually solved that problem statement in an adequate fashion, that we are then ready to move into the next journey of the product development cycle. And at that stage, we go through a build process, and we may create low fidelity or high fidelity prototypes. Generally, once you start development, we move into the high fidelity prototypes. And again, through that process, we look to test and validate. So the intent is to ensure that we're always coming back to the customer. We are always testing the concept or the product that we are building, ensuring that we're aligning to that originating problem statement. And even throughout the product's life cycle, when it moves into a natural state, as product leaders and innovators, our goal is to ensure that we evolve those products. So how do we do that? We continue that cycle of feedback, constant feedback with our customers, be it the acquirers, the merchants, and the end consumers. So we never stand still. Our problem statement is never a problem statement that is static. We continue to test, evolve that over the course of the product life cycle.
I love that. I love the fact that you said that, nothing is ever static, and how really design thinking influences our proactive strategy and development. I think that's great. So can you give us some examples or share with us, how does design thinking influence our Gateway development?
Absolutely. Design thinking has a profound impact, not only how we design and build our products, but more importantly, how we think about our customer and who those customers are. I touched on the fact that there are multiple customer personas within the Gateway business that we need to be conscious of and take through the journey. And that is going to influence each of the different features and functions that we build. And it's not just about the top line strategy. It's, as noted, how we actually take those personas and understand what the drivers are of those personas that will influence a new feature such as an alternate payment method that we may enable. How does the consumer interact with that alternate payment method through any of our channels within the Gateway business? How does the merchant actually look to understand that alternate payment method and then use that as a point of acceptance for their customers, being the consumers? And finally, how do our acquiring partners also understand that and have a different level of context around the product or offering, so they can proactively engage with their merchants, help educate them on the value that that capability will deliver, both at a technical and a commercial level. So we think about it through all those different lenses, and there are several ways of viewing benefits of design thinking within an organization and the way we think about it within the gateway business. As a process, it's a great catalyst for change and evolution. Internally, for us, it's a way of building collaboration between often siloed teams. It creates a space for the productive sharing of ideas and building innovative solutions that have the broadest possible support at their inception. And it's a process that translates the sometimes disparate languages that different parts of an organization use to communicate into a single, clear narrative that everyone can understand. At MPGS, many of the challenges are now tackled from the start with the cross-functional teams. We have a vast network of stakeholders that we engage through the process, and each part of the business is invested in discovering and deploying the solution, from the lofty heights of strategy to the coalface of customer transaction flows. Within these teams, each now has a much improved respect and understanding of the range of skills and how each brings great value to the organization, and more importantly, the customer.
I love that. And you know, we've worked together, so you know me, I'm a bit of a process fan as well. And I think what I find most exciting about design thinking, and what I find most, not insightful, but perhaps just the most unique and just fantastic part, is that when you go through this process, you know, the challenge that maybe you immediately think is the challenge isn't always the real root challenge. You know, after you have stakeholder meetings and interviews and you really get to the you know, the meat of the issue, you sometimes find out, correct me if I'm wrong, that it might be something else completely that you need to solve for.
Absolutely. And as you say, that's the beauty of design thinking and having that collaborative process, is that you start with an assumption, and that in itself is obviously a danger that we need to be mindful of. And we're always asking questions, and you're always probing to really understand what is the true driver behind the need.
Yep.
And that fundamentally then will get you to that end outcome. And as you said, that's the great thing, is we start with a view, and that view by the end of the process looks vastly different to where we started. So it's cliche, but it is a journey.
Yeah. No. And inquisitive minds. I think that's always very important, especially in the payments industry, where things are changing, especially so, you know, within the past year, within the past 5 years, rapid change, rapid development, to really the end goal of creating a seamless, frictionless, you know, safe and secure gateway, and, you know, transaction, of course, for the customer, the merchant, you know, the banking partner. So I think we've hit on so many fun things, but I want to dive in a little bit deeper. So how would you say design thinking, and then also studying the customer engagement, the customer personas that Matt talked about last month, really does impact our goal of creating that frictionless payment? Because I think it's a wonderful build. You know, and this is why we've done these podcasts this way, is you take the customer persona, and like you said earlier, it's really the base. And then you add on the design thinking, and it really builds such a fantastic product.
Absolutely. So when I take into context the vision of seamless, frictionless, safe and secure gateway, design thinking takes those fundamental pillars and applies a collaborative framework to put the user first. So what does that mean? We start the design journey with the end user at the beginning of the ideation process, and work backward to solve the experiential requirements of the said user, as we've been discussing. Design thinking calls for collaboration, creating a positive environment that's great for growth and experimenting. A great quote is Herbert Simon, a professor of psychology at Carnegie Mellon University, said, "There are no judgments in design thinking. This eliminates the fear of failure and encourages maximum input and participation. Wild ideas are welcome, since these often lead to the most creative solutions." And I think that's just such a good representation of what the process, what the journey should be about. There are no wrong ideas. There's no idea that is, you know, too audacious for us to tackle and apply through the process. So it's important to consider many options for similar problems, even when the solution seems obvious. Having multiple perspectives can lead to innovative approaches, and diversity of minds in that process is vitally important. And design thinking helps shift focus away from a features-first approach to a user-first mentality. By observing and speaking directly to users, we can solve the problems that real people face. That's the difference between adding value versus blindly adding features based upon assumptions. Mm-hmm. Great problem solving taps into a customer's feelings and experiences to provide purposeful and informed changes. Design perspectives don't just address challenges, they rethink them entirely. The tendency to reshape problems leads to innovation that seems deceptively simple. With the user constantly in mind, design thinking ensures that these solutions are intuitive and even humanizing. So I think in saying all that, that's the effect, that's the change that we're trying to drive within Gateway. And that fundamentally speaks to our vision of that seamless, frictionless, safe and secure gateway. The way we solve for that and the way we achieve that vision is through employing these principles and through employing a diverse set of minds that we bring along the journey, be it our customer, be it our internal teams, internal cross-functional teams that may have no affinity to the product domain. When we think about developing a product, we will have input from our legal departments, we'll have, our InfoSec or security team come along the journey, and through that interaction, that's where we unlock, I think, the greatest power of this process.
I think that sounds fantastic. I mean, wild ideas, diversity. And yeah, I think I see how going through that process, you're going a bit into the great unknown for sure. You're not sure what will come out or what will be the end result on the other end, it sounds like.
Absolutely. You don't have a clear finishing point. And again, that's part of the excitement of, I guess, having the opportunity for us to work in the space that we do, having the opportunity to employ these frameworks, and we are solving for something that may not exist today, and a future trend that may emerge in the months or years to come.
No, I think that's great, and it's showing our forward thinking, and I love that. So okay, so we talked about unexpected and kind of expecting the unexpected. I'd love stories. So what are some of the more unexpected trends that perhaps were discovered maybe in some design thinking, or consumer behaviors that you're kind of going through design thinking now, and not just how to fix or how to move forward from those challenges, but what are some things, especially with the pandemic? I think as we move into post-pandemic recovery, and I know every country is in different stages of that, how does that impact our gateway, and how will design thinking move us forward with that?
Yeah, fantastic question. Well, there's no doubt amongst the upheaval of the pandemic, we've seen several longer-term macroeconomic trends persist and accelerate. With social distancing becoming the norm, the shift towards cashless societies developed at speed. Across the globe, merchants have adjusted to this trend by providing contactless terminals, QR codes in store, or exclusively selling online, or a combination of both. So blurring that physical and digital environment together. Another trend that we've seen is the rise of new local payment methods. When cash-based payments was the global norm, you would just exchange a coin for a piece of paper. Today, payments are culturally bound. Some regions favour e-wallets, others favour bank transfers, credit cards, buy now, pay later solutions. To address shoppers' needs, merchants need the ability to identify and support emerging consumer behaviours as fast as possible. Over the past year, we also saw increased awareness of the social and ecological impacts of consumerism. A recent study noted that 62% of respondents stated that the ethics of retailers are now more important to them because of the pandemic. New technologies have a role to play by providing consumers with options to take responsibility for their purchases. For example, offsetting the carbon footprint of their purchases or donating to charities at the checkout experience, which we at Mastercard have solved through concepts or products like Mastercard Donate. So those trends have emerged or accelerated as a result of the pandemic, and for us in Gateway, they have had a profound impact on the way we are shaping and we think about our strategy. And one of the key themes that I touched on was connecting the online and offline worlds. The digitization of global commerce, is increasingly prevalent. And as noted, the pandemic has shown that resilience of merchants who are able to rapidly transfer their physical to digital channels are those merchants that are likely to see out the challenge and the evolving ecosystem that we live in. Around the world, we saw people rushing to their favorite stores or restaurants when these reopened. Consumers are still deeply attached to the unique experience and the social aspect offered by physical outlets. Unified commerce, or the convergence of offline and online channels, will continue to be a major theme in the upcoming years. Shoppers expect a single brand experience, regardless of whether they're buying online or offline. A good example is the rise of personalized virtual shopping. From home, a shopper can join a video call with a sales representative to see available collections in the store and receive advice. And when the shopper is ready to purchase, the representative sends them a secure payment link by message, and the transaction can be settled in seconds. So if I take that as a trend and think about the influence it's having on the direction we're driving our product proposition, the way our customers in the retail sector, in the hospitality sector are responding, that is having, a significant shift. And the way we look to solve for that problem is going through that engagement process, that collaborative process with our customers using the design thinking framework. Now, without giving too much away, these are certainly areas that we think about every day in Gateway, and we continue to think about them every day because they're ever evolving. They're not going to stand still. These trends that we experience and we've seen over the last 12 months will accelerate and will, I guess, for a lack of a better word, mutate and augment based on the ongoing changing societal needs. Another point there is that unified commerce is here to stay. Of the term unified or omni-channel has been around for some time, and it's been bantered around for quite a bit. And in some parts of the world, it's been seen as a buzzword. But as new technologies have become an essential asset to connecting the digital and physical worlds by offering centralized shopper insights on both online and in-person transactions, we're seeing that as a fundamental need of our customers that is accelerating. We've seen data that shows 50% of unified commerce retailers saw transactions remain consistent during the pandemic. And what a result that is, where in a scenario where we're not able to, or limited on how much access and exposure we can have, retailers were realizing that transactions were remaining consistent because of the product offering that they were able to provide to their customers and the different channel interaction they could afford. So it was no longer about necessarily just having to either shop online or offline. I could either start my journey online, finish it offline, or vice versa. And the simplest example of that is click and collect, which we now all take for granted. But I know for me, I would do my grocery shopping through my mobile app and my grocer, order it, and whenever I'm ready, I'll pick it up from a safe and secure location within the grocer's network. I know that payment has been processed securely through my existing account, but I can then blur that experience by actually going in store and picking the goods up. So a very basic premise of how unified commerce has influenced our lives is exactly that, the click and collect concept.
Yeah, and I do recall, now that we're talking about that, I think it was, and this makes perfect sense in regards to design thinking. And like you said, the evolution of what we were seeing in the pandemic. I know that we just, right before the holiday shopping season, October, November, we implemented click and collect for those small business merchants too. Because I mean, when we think about the global economy, our small business merchants are so important and they impact, our globe, and we need to do obviously what we can to protect them and keep them competitive with those larger merchants. So I loved the examples. I really especially love the example of the personal shopper. For me personally, I'm going to have to see if some of my favorite stores do that.
Thought that would resonate.
Yeah. No, that resonated wonderfully with me. Thank you, David. So, okay, I know we can't look into the future, but if we're talking about the blur of digital and online and unified commerce, just your personal perspective, we've been talking about peak season planning. How our big merchants and partners, banking partners, can help their merchants prepare for peak season. And I know me personally, this year, I've been a little bit of a revenge shopper. I've been buying more experiences and spending a little bit more maybe than I should. And I'm just wondering, do you think that's going to be just a general, perhaps, trend? Like, what is your perspective on what the holiday shopping season might be this year?
It's going to be a really interesting one, Anne. I think, with the constraint of consumers being locked down in their homes for such a long time, there will no doubt be a consistency in theme whereby many will continue to have those online experiences and prefer that because of the safety element that provides without the need of having to go into a store. But I fundamentally think there's going to be a huge influx of that in-person shopping experience, which we now probably all take for granted, and for the best part of 18 months haven't had an opportunity to go and experience that outside of buying groceries, which I'm sure you can all appreciate can only be exciting for so long. So I really think that in-store experience is going to come back with a vengeance. How retailers, merchants respond to that by providing more enhanced experiences through the learnings that they've been able to take through the pandemic, and look to potentially blur that and introduce a digital experience into that physical experience, will be something that may proliferate and may resonate with many shoppers. But I really think a basic trend and response will be more of us will be out there spending time in store and just having the pleasures, being able to experience those pleasures that we weren't able to experience of the past. And we see in the payment ecosystem, from an experience perspective, there's also the different payment methods that have emerged and accelerated through the pandemic. Buy now, pay later is a term 12, 18 months ago that many wouldn't necessarily have responded to, but now buy now, pay later has penetrated, I think, the buying experience of most millennials and other generations, and that in itself is reshaping that retail experience. It's no longer about me having to go and purchase an item and pay it all up front. I can split obviously the cost of that product over a set number of installments, and we're seeing banks from an issuing context respond differently to that and providing their own products through the credit card that can enable that capability. You have a plethora of different apps that also support that experience as well. And whilst not here yet, I think an emerging trend that will accelerate more as we look into the future is going to be the proliferation of digital currency. And again, how does that reshape our buying experience and the pivot from the traditional tender that we're all very used to now an emerging digital currency that still obviously has a long way to go in terms of its maturity cycle, but we're seeing more and more acceptance of digital currencies in different retail contexts. Automobile dealers, in some instances, are now accepting digital currency to purchase vehicles. We're seeing it across different retail offerings also. So whilst not an immediate, I think, trend that we'll see impacting our Christmas buying pattern, in the Christmases to come, I could foresee digital currency also playing a far bigger role in how we buy and how we interact at the checkout experience or through the online experience.
That makes complete sense. Yeah. I mean, I definitely assumed that I was not the only consumer in the world who missed so badly going into her favorite store with like a coffee in hand and just browsing. So yeah, I agree with you. I think that I can definitely see that in-person shopping will definitely come back, like you said, with a vengeance. Okay, so this is one of my favorite parts of the podcast, David. I love to ask, you've got a fantastic captive audience. What would be your pitch? What is your one sentence pitch on why design thinking is critical to developing a successful gateway?
For me, it really centers around the mindset change that we're driving. Yes, there's the customer element that we will need to embed, but the exciting part for me, and I think the part of the story that will leave a legacy, is the improvement and value that we're driving here is in ensuring that we're embedding this within our people, within our teams, to apply not only in their current roles, but in future roles as well. And the term that I like to use is that we're investing and building future fit leaders for Mastercard and other organizations. And what that means for me is that through the context of design thinking, we're ensuring that the customer from here on in will be at the center of everything that we do, be it in Gateway or in other parts of the organization or in other organizations. So we are building a legacy. We're investing in our people who can take this concept and move it forward throughout, the years and generations to come. And the intrinsic method of building product starts to break down, and we have a fundamental change to putting the customer first. And for me, that starts with that mindset shift.
Well, it was a little over a sentence, but I liked it.
I'm glad. It's hard to contextualize, but it's clearly something for me. I'm deeply passionate about, and I'm really further impassioned by the fact that we have an opportunity here to, as I said, to invest in our people, to change their perception, their approach to work, and embrace a new way of working. And that new way of working will have a profound impact in the community for years and decades to come.
I love that. No, I love that. And I definitely see that. Do you feel that our partners and their customers, I mean, probably not the consumers, they don't perhaps maybe see as much intricacy as we do in taking and accepting a payment. But when we talk about that mindset, do you feel that our partners also see what design thinking means to the Gateway, or do you feel that we're leading them a little bit towards this?
It's certainly a blend of both, and the opportunity that we have in our hands at the moment is to be able to work with our customers and our partners to embed the mindset and share the learnings that we have, share the insights that we have as Mastercard and as a thought leader to support their strategic imperatives in the direction they're taking. Some customers will have a greater affinity with concepts like design thinking. They may have their own competency within the organization, which is fantastic. And in those moments, that's where I think, we can unlock the greatest value, where you have the two parties coming together and really aligning and working to solve the bigger problem. But where that doesn't necessarily exist, it's really about how do we support the customer? How do we take them on the journey? How do we embed that mindset? How do we leave that legacy with them and their people, so they can then apply it to other parts of their organization, their products that impact their customers as well?
That sounds fantastic. Again, looking forward, what do you think is next in regards for Mastercard Payment Gateway Services and design thinking and with our partners and with our customer personas?
So yeah, for me, what's next is really centered around instilling a new way of thinking, a new way of solving problems. And I've overused that terminology, but it is with a clear intent. As we ground these principles across our teams in MPGS and the organisation, the improvements to our value proposition will naturally be delivered. We have an ambitious change agenda ahead of us, and to realise our vision of being a trusted advisor to our customers through our white label offering, we intend to differentiate and continue innovating using the principles of design thinking. So the future for us in MPGS is really about embracing the concept and ensuring that we embed it in everything that we do, and it just doesn't become rhetoric that we reference from time to time. It truly becomes a way of working or a way of living for us.
These are exciting times. I really feel that these are very exciting times within Mastercard, within the payment industry, and then with also, within Mastercard Payment Gateway Services, from moving into the future in regards to design thinking, our strategy, our development, our value prop, but the industry as a whole, payments as a whole. It's definitely not boring. A lot of change is either imminent or it's in process for sure.
Definitely. I've always said that payment is an exciting space to be in. So we continue to live that and realise that every day. And there will be ongoing trends and shifts to that. And payments influences, as we've noted, our experience as consumers in so many ways that we probably don't necessarily realise. So we are in a very fortunate position to be able to shape how consumers interact, be it online or in-store or both.
Yeah, or both, or just a completely unified experience, to take that wording from you. Well, David, thank you for joining me. In closing, I think this was a fantastic conversation. If you have any last thoughts, anything last to share?
Well, firstly, thank you for the opportunity, and it has been a great conversation. And my final thought for the conversation is, I encourage everyone to really understand the values of design thinking, how they can, even at a small scale, embrace the concepts within their businesses, even within the way, on a personal context, you solve problems. And by going down that journey, I really think that we can make a fundamental shift in our experiences that we deliver to our customers, whatever our product or our offering is.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us, David. I have a feeling you're going to be a repeat guest on this podcast. This was a really great conversation. And I know I learned a lot, from just scratching the surface from what I knew with design thinking to really how we're applying it for our partners, their customers, consumers, and how it's shaping the evolution of our gateway and payments as a whole. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, and we will catch you next time.
Thank you.